World Federalist Association, or WFA, is one of the largest organizations that openly promote world government. Periodically, the WFA extends a Global Governance Award to a prominent individual pushing for the same goal. Former CBS anchorman Walter Cronkite was among the recipients of the WFA award.
Thank you very much. Today we must develop federal structures on a global level to deal with world problems. We need a system of enforceable world law, a democratic federal world government.
In a closed-circuit hookup, Hillary Clinton congratulated Cronkite.
For decades you told us the way it is, but tonight we honor you for fighting for the way it could be.
In 1993, the WFA honored an editor for Time magazine for an essay he had written entitled The Birth of the Global Nation.
Nationhood as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority.
After receiving the award, the editor, Strobe Talbot, was appointed Deputy Secretary of State in the Clinton administration. In February of 2000, the New York Times allowed the WFA a full-page ad to spread its globalist propaganda. However, those striving for world government generally keep their objective hidden from the public eye. The late Senator Alan Cranston explains why to his fellow globalists in the April 1976 issue of Transition magazine.
The more talk about world government, the less chance of achieving it, because it frightens people who would accept the concept of world law.
Globalists often cloak their ultimate goal behind less threatening labels, terms as world order, collective security, interdependence, global community, economic integration, or convergence. However, all point down the same road. Yet candid admissions do occur. Occasionally, they even expose official policy. One of the most blatant is recorded in a confidential 1961 study. Commissioned by the U.S. State Department, a world effectively controlled by the United Nations directly states the key point.
It is world government we are discussing here, inescapable.
The author, MIT professor Lincoln P. Bloomfield, also explains that the UN would have to have an unchallengeable monopoly on military power.
A world effectively controlled by the United Nations is one in which world government would come about through the establishment of supranational institutions characterized by mandatory universal membership. National disarmament is a condition for effective UN control.
The Bloomfield study is grounded in official American policy. That policy is stated openly in Freedom from War, the United States program for general and complete disarmament in a peaceful world. It was presented to the UN General Assembly by President Kennedy. The document calls for the transfer of national armaments to UN control in 3 stages. Stage 2 proposes that
the UN Peace Force shall be established and progressively strengthened.
At the dawn of the 21st century, programs to complete this stage are firmly established and well underway. The Freedom from War blueprint concludes with Stage 3,
where no state would have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN Peace Force.
This policy has guided every administration since. Even so-called conservative Republican administrations have been committed to building this new world order.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Yet the potential dangers from this massive power transfer are not being discussed in the public arena. Behind the conduct of top American officials and their media allies exist motivations that stepping back in time can help clarify. The framers of the Constitution had a profound understanding of human nature. They knew that even the best of men could not be trusted with power, so they designed a government with checks and balances to make it difficult for officials to accumulate and abuse power. The United Nations, however, embodies few of those checks and balances, and it recognizes no moral authority greater than itself. Investigative reporter for the New American Magazine and author of the United Nations Exposed, William F. Jasper.
Certainly one of the most important principles embodied in the U.S. Constitution is the recognition that individual rights come from God, and the purpose of government is to protect those rights. The United Nations recognizes no God above the UN. The United Nations therefore recognizes no impediments or restrictions on its power.
An early UN peacekeeping operation illustrates the inherent danger of entrusting the UN with power. The setting is the Belgian colony in Africa known as the Congo. In the early 60s, European nations fell under intense international pressure to give up their colonies in Africa and prepare them for independence and self-rule. To hasten this process, the UN formed a committee on decolonization. At the same time, the Soviets were working to gain control of these colonies for themselves. They sponsored so-called liberation movements and conspired to bring their frontmen to power through international pressure, bribery, and even terrorism. In 1960, Belgium yielded to the international pressure and granted independence to the Congo. The Soviets were ready to fill the vacuum. Patrice Lumumba was their man, bought and paid for with cash, arms, luxuries, and all the women, gin, and hashish he desired. With Lumumba as premier, peaceful independence lasted 1 week. Lumumba then unleashed a communist reign of terror against the populace. Men, women, and children were tortured and murdered. Amidst the terror in the Congo, the province of Katanga remained, by comparison, an island of peace, order, and stability. Under the able leadership of Moise Tshombe, Katanga declared its independence from the Central Congolese regime. "I am seceding from chaos," declared President Tshombe, a devout Christian and an ardent anti-communist. For a brief moment, the courageous people in this infant nation stood as the singular testament to the capability of the newly independent Africans. As a free people, they were capable of governing themselves with a sense of peace, order, and justice. Tshombe's misfortune, however, was to be pro-Western and pro-free enterprise. Nikita Khrushchev declared Tshombe to be a turncoat, a traitor to the interests of the Congolese people. American liberals echoed the Kremlin hue and cry. Soon after, the U.S. joined with the USSR in support of a UN resolution authorizing the world body to send troops to the Congo. The UN troops were used to assist Lumumba, the chief terrorist, in his efforts to subjugate Katanga.
UN troops advancing from all sides systematically wipe out all resistance pockets, and in the process machine guns and bazookas, killing many innocent civilians running for their lives to find cover from UN fire.
Smith Hempstone, African correspondent for the Chicago Daily News, witnessed the December 1961 UN attack on the capital of Katanga.
The UN jets next turned their attention to the center of the city. Screaming in at treetop level, they blasted the post office and the radio station, severing Katanga's communications with the outside world. One came to the conclusion that the UN's action was intended to make it more difficult for correspondents to let the world know what was going on.
46 doctors of Elizabethville, Belgian, Swiss, Hungarian, Brazilian, and Spanish, fired off telegrams to the UN pleading for a ceasefire. Later, they unanimously issued a joint report indicting the UN for atrocities against innocent civilians.
Tshombe takes reporters on an eyewitness tour of an Elizabethville hospital, which, although clearly identified by Red Cross markings and flags, had been bombed and shelled by the UN.